Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're located.
Good afternoon.
We're going to give it just maybe one more minute to let people in from the waiting room. So now's a good time. Take a second. I'll go ahead and pull up our housekeeping slide. So go ahead, take a beat, rename yourself, pretty preferred names or pronouns. You can add what organization you're with as well. Make sure you're on mute. So just take a minute to get settled. All right. This might be our biggest webinar to date. Very exciting. Hi, everyone. Hi, Christine. Hi, Joyce. Yeah, feel free if you want to jump on the chat box and just say where you're coming from or maybe what organization you're associated with. It'd be nice to see who's in the room today. We have a really big group, so just make sure you're muted right now. And I'll go ahead and get started because we have a lot to cover. So Colby, I'll let you keep an eye on the waiting room and keep admitting people. So hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Grant Writing for Pantries. So my name is Leah Quinn, and I'm the Food Security Program Manager at Leah's Pantry, which means that I oversee our Nutrition Pantry program and our Bridge Housing Project, which is an initiative to support food security and nutrition programming at affordable housing sites all throughout California. And today I'm joined by my colleague, Colby D'Onofrio, and Colby can give a little wave if you can see her in the sea of people. She's going to be our main tech lead today. And she's also going to be gathering questions as they come in from you through the chat box. So if you're having an issue, you can go ahead and chat Colby directly, and she will try and get that sorted for you. So a couple housekeeping items. So this presentation today is going to be recorded. It will be posted online. Go ahead, make sure you're on mute as you join. Sometimes you're automatically off mute. And so we just want to make sure we can hear the speakers today. You can update your name, your pronouns, add your organization if you'd like. And please do add that to the chat box. I see those coming in. Add any questions that come to the chat or that come to you throughout today's presentation to the chat box, and Colby will be collecting those, or you can save them for the end of today's webinar and we'll have time for you to ask questions to our presenters directly. And then finally, because we always get this question, yes, we will be sharing a PDF of the slides later today. We'll also be sharing a one-pager of resources with tips, tricks, and a lot of great links. So after today's training, we'll send an email to everyone registered with the slides and with that resource document as well. Here is a look at our agenda for the day. So we're having our welcome right now, and then we're going to have our partner at Bethlehem Food Pantry, Susan Naslin, share her success story going after becoming a great grant writer. We also have a wonderful team from Los Angeles Regional Food Bank's development team, and they're going to be sharing some best practices around the grant writing process and really demystifying this grant process. And then finally, like I said, we're going to have time for questions at the end. So you can add them to the chat box now, or you can save it for the end. And then I think because we have so many people in the room today, if you do want to ask a question directly, use the raise hand feature via Zoom, and then we could call on you and have you unmute. I think that will work best. So I'll introduce our speakers in a moment, but first let me share a little bit about who Leah's Pantry is and why we're offering this opportunity today. So Leah's Pantry is a nonprofit. We were founded 17 years ago in San Francisco, and now we work all throughout California and all throughout the United States to support organizations, individuals, and families with resources and skills needed to build well-nourished communities and healthy and equitable food systems. So that means that our work and the reason and vision that we have this organization is to improve the health, the wellness, and the resilience of our communities. We do that through a few different strategies. We offer some direct service programs, things like nutrition ed workshops, our food security program we have that we train in, which is NPP, and I'll share a little bit more about that. We do organizational capacity building through our presentations we give and the trainings we offer. And then finally, we provide thought leadership through sharing important ideas about trauma and how trauma impacts our health and the health of our communities. So you can see we have a lot of programs and curriculums that we create and offer through Leah's Pantry, but I just want to quickly highlight two of them that might be of interest to people in this room today. So first of all, we have our Nutrition Pantry program, which is a Healthy Pantry PSE, or Policy Systems and Environment Initiative. And through that training, we train community members, public health professionals, food bankers, how to use our tools and our process and our resources to take pantries in their community through this trauma-informed goal-setting program. And that pantry can then reach a certification level of a bronze, a silver, or a gold status. Now, I think a lot of you in this room are actually directly working in and at pantry sites. You might also be interested in our Building Nourishing Pantries training, which we offer twice a year. And in this training, over 2 days, it's virtually, but we uncover what it means to integrate trauma-informed practices into pantry spaces. And we share a lot of examples and resources and how-tos on improving aspects of a pantry, like the physical environment, how to offer new or more nutrition education, making more community connections, getting client feedback in creative ways. So this might be a particularly interesting training for you. We'll be offering it in September. So if you're interested in learning more about either of those or Leah's Pantry in general, check out our website, leahspantry.org, and we'll also have a survey at the end of today's presentation where we will have you be able to opt into receiving our newsletter if you want more information. Okay, so with that, let me share a little bit more about who's going to be speaking today. So first up, we have Susan Naslund. Susan became the manager of the Bethlehem Food Pantry, a part of the Good Shepherd Ministry, in 2017. Now, this pantry, which is based in Southern California, and I've worked closely with over the past couple of years, they've grown from serving 39 pantries or 39 families a week out of a converted garage to now greeting an average of 339 guests in a client choice market style setting. And that journey from garage to market was really made possible in large part by the award of several generous grants. So Susan is going to be sharing her experience of becoming a successful grant writer. You're also going to hear from Jade Martinez and Devi Singh, both with the Development Department of the Los Angeles Regional Food Bank. So Jade is the grants manager at the Los Angeles Regional Food Bank, where she works with a dedicated team deeply invested in fighting hunger. She has 6 years of experience in securing awards from corporate, foundation, and individual funders. And Jade's approach is really sharing your story. That's her approach to grant writing. And then finally, we have Debbie, who is our Development Administrative Coordinator at the Los Angeles Regional Food Bank. And she works with an incredible team and has experience as well working with community gardens and supporting renewable energy resources for renters in Santa Monica. So we're really excited to have our group of presenters with us today. Now, before jumping into the meat of the content and handing it over to Susan, at Leah's Pantry, we always like to start a training with a moment to just take a break, rest, and regulate. Taking these short, small pauses throughout your day and doing it right now, it's going to help us all be a little more present, a little more centered, more focused, less distracted. So if you're comfortable, please participate in this short activity with me. It's called soup bowl breathing. So cup your hands in front of your face, or you can place them on your lap. And then close or lower your eyes. And imagine that you're holding onto a bowl of warm soup. So what you're going to do is gently breathe in through the nose, as if you're smelling that bowl of soup, and breathe out through the mouth, as if you're cooling it. So gently and slowly is the name of the game with these breaths. So do that twice more, in and out. And the last one on your own. All right. I know I feel a little bit better. As a presenter, you always have a little bit of jitters. That helps me out. Okay, so with that, I want to hand it over to Susan.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to be with you via Zoom. As Leah mentioned early on, we have a pantry in East San Diego County that has grown tremendously over the last 5 years. And when we started, we had no idea what we were doing. I don't know if many of you might be in that same position. We knew that 1 in 3 San Diegans suffer from food insecurity, and we wanted to make an impact and help our neighbors. And so we just dove in, not knowing what we were doing. So I'm going to give you some of the tips we've learned over that time. They may be repeated by other presenters, which I think will just underscore the importance of what we've all learned. So I'm just going to jump in and tell you right away what we have done. So the first thing is that anyone can write a grant. I had no grant writing experience before we began all of this, but just know your own organization very well is my advice. Have a mission statement and be able to incorporate that into your writing. And so for us, for instance, the vision of the Bethlehem Food Pantry is to provide a dignified source of nourishment to our neighbors in the city of El Cajon. And so knowing that well, you can incorporate that into your work. And besides knowing yourself,
Oh, Susan, so sorry. You just got muted. So just
I'm back on.
I
don't know. Somehow got muted. But anyway, I'll back up to that. Be sure you know your funder well. Know their website, review that, know it inside and out, and make sure that their goals and vision align with yours. And then respond to their application using their own language. So even though you might not like the words they use, you need to use it. So as a writer, there's certain words that bug me right now because they're being repeated all the time, like silo and pivot. And I really actually don't care for the word resilient, but it's very important in pantry work, and it's important that our guests can become resilient. So if a funder uses that word, you be sure you use that word as well. So for instance, if the question on the grant app says, describe how your program will help your neighbors become more resilient, then you be sure that you write that your program, we're seeking ways to help pantry guests become more resilient and self-sufficient, and then tell how your program will do that. And avoid acronyms. They're not relatable. And if you are a faith-based pantry, I recommend that you do not use religious language in your applications. I believe you should write in the first person and make your grant personal and relatable. You don't want it to be like a textbook. So I might write something like, although counterintuitive, we want to serve fewer guests because that's an indication that our guests are becoming more resilient. So I'm using first personal and person and relatable language. You need to learn to say a lot in a few words. Sometimes the questions have limits of 250 words. That's hard to write those answers in. And so I recommend that you have someone proofread your work, make sure it's grammatically correct, and make sure that it's concise and not too long. I believe you want to tell a story. So collect authentic stories from your pantry experiences. So one I often use that's a true story that happened is this. One of our guests recently remarked, I can go anywhere for free food, but I come here because I like the way you treat me. And that tells a story about our pantry that's true, and that also conveys the fact that we are a pantry that believes in dignity. And brag about your pantry as you're telling that story. I never hesitate to brag about our relationship with Leah's Pantry. And so I often write, The Bethlehem Food Pantry was awarded gold certification by Leah's Pantry, a nationwide nonprofit corporation that equips pantries with trauma-informed education to better serve their guests. We're very proud of that. And include data. You need to show growth or need in your pantry. And so that means you need to actually be collecting data. Be sure that you're collecting numbers of guests served every week, the pounds of food that you distribute. So I will often write now this year in my grants, in the first quarter of 2023, the number of guests we have served has increased by 12% over the last quarter of 2022. That data is really important. I think funders want to see that. Take a grant writing course if you can. I recommend this highly. They're available often through community colleges. Here in California, I took a class through the University of California, San Diego, and that's available online, and that's available, I believe, nationwide. Anyone can take that course. It was excellent. And in a grant writing course, you'll learn to make a template. And this is really key because grant writing takes a lot of time. Don't think you can just whip these out. It takes hours and hours. And so if you have a template, you can go back in and grab things to cut and paste into your grants. And there'll be things you learn, like sometimes a grant application will ask for things like budget narratives or objectives and goals and measurable outcomes. And that can be kind of scary information until you take a course and learn that really it's very simple. You just need to learn how to write those things. Just this last weekend, I wrote a grant that only had 2 questions. And then other times it can be 20 pages. And if you don't have access to a grant writing course, then I recommend the book Winning Grants, and that's available on Amazon. And so I thought you might be interested in just knowing a few of the things that we have spent our grant money on, that we received grants for. And so obviously food is number one. That's a picture right there on this slide of what our market distribution looks like. And we have received grants to buy food. But we'll go on to the next slide and see that when Leah mentioned that we started out with 39 guests, we were in a converted garage back then. But now that we're serving 300 guests at a time, we needed to change our space. And so we took a social hall of our church. I see that many of you are faith-based pantries. And we needed to make it so that social hall could still be used for other events, but have our pantry available on the weekends. And so on the right, you can see the left is the before, on the right is the after. We built an enclosure for all of our pantry storage, and the doors in the middle can be closed, so you have no idea that the pantry's back there when it's being used for other means. And so that was something that we received money for. Next slide. And back in our storage area, we received grants to buy shelving. And we received grants to buy commercial grade freezers so that we can increase the capacity of the amount of food we rescue from grocery stores, and so that we have a place to freeze that. Next slide is a picture of a walk-in cooler that we also bought with a grant. And I don't know how this is in other counties, but in the county of San Diego, you have to shield your walk-in cooler from the street so it can't be seen, which we didn't realize early on. And so we received a grant to build a screen, a fence for our walk-in cooler. Next slide. We also received a grant to buy really heavy-duty utility carts. In COVID, we switched to a solely drive-through experience. And these carts helped us get that food out to the curb. Now that we are able to walk through, we offer our walk-through market-style pantry. But we found out that there are many people who have mobility issues or very small children in their cars, and they still prefer to have the drive-through option. So we have that with our utility carts, and those carts run about $500 a piece. Inside in our market style, we have shopping carts. We have personal shoppers who help our guests choose the food that they would like to take home with them. And we bought a number of those shopping carts with a grant. And then as kind of a twist, we decided to start a community garden because we found that we had a lot of rotting produce in our pantry. And rather than put that in the landfill, we said, hey, let's have a community garden where we compost the rotting food from our pantry, becomes rich soil. We grow new produce, and that goes back to our pantry. And so we were able to put all that fencing in and our garden beds with grants. Not pictured is we also received a grant to provide a salary for a pantry manager. And that's a little tricky because you also need to be able to prove that you'll be able to sustain that salary going forward. Usually they only want to fund you for 1 year, not ongoing salary. So if you can do that, think about that as something you might need. And I'll tell you, we have a pending grant out there. I'm waiting on pins and needles to hear if we receive it, for cloth tote bags for all of our 300 guests. Because we use, you see, way too many plastic bags that not only impacts our budget, but also our environment. And we do not want to see those plastic bags in the landfill. So that's something that's pending out there. The most challenging thing about writing a grant is just submitting it, hitting that submit button, or putting that envelope in the mail. But you can do it. I want to encourage you to do it. Look at all these things you can receive. There are lots of people out there who are interested in helping our neighbors have food. So I encourage you to go for it. And if you have questions, let me know. I'm happy to help you. And that is it.
Thank you so much, Susan. I love all the images you included. I feel like they really tell the story of Bethlehem's growth and your vision for the pantry as well. So again, save your questions, add them to the chat box now, and Colby can collect them, or you can ask them at the end directly of Susan. With that, I am going to stop sharing and pass it over to Jade and Devi from the Los Angeles Regional Food Bank.
Hi, it looks like I have my screen up. You can see everything okay? Great.
Yeah. Can everybody see?
Looks
Right.
good.
Hi, everyone. I'm Devi. I'm so happy to be here with all of you. I'm the Development Administrative Coordinator at the Los Angeles Regional Food Bank, and our mission is to essentially ensure that no one goes hungry in LA County. We do that through a variety of ways, such as education, supporting policy that helps end food insecurity, and just mobilizing resources to fight hunger in our community, and conducting like hunger awareness surveys, and just getting the community involved with supporting hunger relief. I'm part of the development department, which specifically helps us meet our mission by allowing us to acquire the funds or the money necessary to ensure that no one goes hungry in LA County. We do this through largely building and maintaining relationships with our donors, which include individuals, foundations, and corporations. These sort of relationships really allow our organization to sustain and grow our resources and support the long-term financial health of our organization, so we can continue to address the growing food insecurity in our community and ultimately feed more people. So development, fundraising, and marketing tasks frequently overlap. All of these roles contribute to the overall goal of like financial sustainability and lasting community relationships. So development kind of includes a variety of things, but it's mainly about these relationships.
Devi, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Some folks are having a hard time hearing you. It might be the earbuds. Is it possible maybe to disconnect from the Bluetooth and just do the computer speakers?
I'm having trouble with my computer speakers, but maybe if I just use my phone audio, that might be better. Give me 1 second.
Sure. Or some folks are saying maybe speak up. Yeah, anything louder, maybe a little clearer would be great.
Yeah, totally. 1 second.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry to interrupt.
All good.
I heard you for a second and then the audio completely cut out.
Oh,
no, you're
can
back.
everyone hear me?
Say it again.
Can you hear me better now?
Okay, I think I can hear folks in the chat. Okay, we're getting yes, good here. We'll skip it one more second. Yes, yes. Okay, I think we're good to go. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Sorry about that, everyone. These technical difficulties with Zoom. Yeah, so basically I was just talking about development and like there's kind of a lot of misconceptions about development and what it really is. It basically helps an organization meet its mission by simply like acquiring the funds or, you know, the money necessary to ensure that like an organization can meet its mission. And so the LA Food Bank can meet its mission of ensuring that no one goes hungry in LA County. It's mainly about building and maintaining relationships with our donors. These include individuals, foundations, and corporations, which allow our organization to sustain and grow our resources and support the long-term financial health of our organization so we can continue to address the growing food insecurity in our community. Yeah, and ultimately development, fundraising, and marketing kind of overlap as all of these roles contribute to the overall goal of financial sustainability and lasting community relationships. But yeah, I would say development is largely about just sustaining these relationships to sustain an organization. And with that, I will pass it to Jade.
Thank you so much, Debbie. That was wonderful overview of the work of our team here at the LA Regional Food Bank. Yeah, my name is Jade Martinez, and I'm really happy to be here with all of you. As Debbie said, this is the food bank's mission here on this slide, and this is really what I go to with all of the grants. It's like servicing our mission and the people that we serve. So I'm hoping that today's session will kind of give you an overview, like a large overview of the grant writing process. And to kind of help with that, we've put together a couple of slides with some grant terminology. Now these are, you might already be familiar with this, but it'll be a great kind of refresher. So many times you will be asked for, so before we get into like all of these details, I wanted to like kind of give you the grant terminology, and then we'll pause and kind of take like an overview of how to approach the grant writing process. So that's just kind of what is to come. So a letter of inquiry is just a brief letter outlining your organization's funding request. And some grant makers may require an LOI and some may not. And this would be like a first introduction into your request. And then they would invite you to submit a full proposal. So this is something that you can expect. And in between that time, it may be a month in between, it may be a week in between when they would submit, when you would submit your LOI, and then you'd get a response back and they'd say, sure, you know, we love your request and your mission statement and all of your impact. We want to hear more. And they will send you a link many times to submit your full proposal. Here's a few more grant terminology that you might come up with throughout the different funders. So something I want to point out from here is the general operating unrestricted funds. So that's important to point out, because when you are putting in your request, like Susan mentioned, they got more specific funding for like a specific project or a specific program or for their outdoor freezer. So the unrestricted operating grant gives your organization and gives you more flexibility when you secure that award to be able to apply that to any area of operations that you see that are most needed at the time. And it also kind of gives you a lot more flexibility. So if there is some unforeseen event in your area that all of a sudden you need more funding for a specific program, you can just apply it there without having to go back to the funder and kind of, you know, pivot, as Susan mentioned. So, you know, this is kind of the typically what you would want to kind of secure is unrestricted operating grants, because it gives you more flexibility. So steps in applying for grant funding. So it seems like everyone here is doing some really great work in your community, and you've decided, like, I'm ready to start securing some grant awards. And it looks like most of you already, have identified a problem in your community. Not in your organization, but in your community, like it's stated here, so that you're able to communicate that to the funders in your grant proposals. And you're going to develop your plan for addressing that need. And that would be like through your programs. What are your goals on how you want to address that problem? But what are the activities that you're doing to help reach your goals? And so that's all part of like your plan. And as Susan mentioned, like a template, I would use this here, like this whole session today, as a way to kind of start thinking about, if you don't already have a template, to start kind of thinking and pulling some of these things out. Your mission statement, if you do have that already, and does that identify a need in your community, and how are you addressing that need? If you can work that all into your mission statement, you're like halfway there to your grant writing. And I know it seems maybe a little a mission statement might be like 2 to 3 sentences, and a grant proposal might be 20 pages. But if you know your mission statement, you can really start to build out your grant proposals. Another great thing to point out here is the researching and identifying grant makers. And I believe Susan and Debbie also touched on this, and that is so important to really just start researching another way to research, like if you just kind of Google different funders, but also kind of looking into what other pantries kind of in the same scale as your pantry or as your organization is being funded, who is funding them? And you can go from there and kind of use that as your research to see, oh, would they fund my organization as well? So that's one way to kind of approach it, as far as like just kind of getting more acclimated into like what the funding landscape looks like. And relationships are key. At the LA Regional Food Bank, I'm very lucky to be working with the team in our development team that has strong relationships with funders, strong relationships with the community, and our programs team, our senior leadership. They have over 2 decades with the organization itself. So those relationships that they have built really help my position as the grants manager to be able to communicate through our proposals, our organization's mission, our impact. But if you haven't already started building those relationships, I really encourage you to start thinking about how you can build those relationships for your organization. And I'll go over to the next slide, but on the other side here, we have write and submit a grant proposal. So these are kind of like the steps that you would be taking. You always want to thank your funder after you get an award. I know many times, you're so excited to get started on your programming, you may forget to send that thank you letter. But that's another way to really just build that relationship and to continuously kind of keep communication open between your organization and funders. Again, also with the reports and final reports, some funders may not ask for kind of like a final report or a progress report, but I think it's a great way for you to start establishing those relationships. Even if they don't ask for a report, it might be nice for you to send something, a little kind of, this was the impact of your award, and include a testimonial of someone from the community that was impacted. Even if the funder doesn't ask for it, it's just a great way to help to build those relationships. And then here we go. I'm going to take a little pause here to what goes into a grant proposal, because it feels like it's a lot of information. And I do want you to start to think about for yourself, what really goes into a grant proposal. And these are kind of the items that you would see on paper: your cover letter, your introduction, the organization's description, your statement of need. But when you think about it, and you're in the day-to-day of it, maybe you're more closely working in the pantry with your community, I think it's always a great thing to identify for yourself, what are all of the people that are involved, all the people that are impacted by your work. And that's really those stories that are going to be written into your grant proposal, the impact that you're making in the community. And like Susan mentioned, that data is important, but it's also great to have testimonials from community members. If you're able to gather a bit of that information and kind of use a little bit of that maybe in your cover letter, or maybe under just in your statement of need. So I'm going to go into the next slide here. Again, a cover letter is important, and you want to kind of keep it concise, and you want to put your request amount, purpose of the request, a brief snapshot of the need. Many times people like to write these at the end because you've already done that like 20-page proposal, and then it's easier to kind of condense and put that into your cover letter. But it's always a really nice touch to include the cover letter. And here we have the introduction. So I think what's important, and like Susan mentioned, many times there are you want to take clues from the funders' guidelines. So they may want more shorter, concise descriptions for each section. Others may want a lot more information. So it's always good to look at the guidelines closely and just make sure that you are mirroring their language. Like Susan did mention, that is very important. And if they are asking like, what are the goals for your organization, just repeating that same, these are the goals for our organization, just really using the same language and kind of making it very clear as you're writing each proposal. The description of your organization, I really do love to include a very thorough kind of overview of the organization, the history, the year that it was founded. Many times we, you're working on in your organization, and you take things that you may think that everyone already knows this, or it's on your website, so they should have seen it on the website, but you shouldn't expect that anyone would, take that extra time. People are so busy, and so you want to make sure you include it in your proposal, and not kind of hope that they know that you've built out a reputation for your organization and you're doing such great work. Because if it's not in your proposal, it may get missed, and you don't know who will be evaluating that proposal. So you just want to make sure that you are concise, you do include all of that information, and the community that you're serving, your target population. You do want to kind of get specific about who are the people that are being impacted, and you want to include the geographic area, and kind of just more information about your specific community, and not taking anything for granted with the writing, that assuming that others will know about your organization. This is your opportunity, like Susan said, to kind of kind of toot your own horn and talk about all that wonderful stuff that you are doing. Your statement of need. This is a great, I love, that the statement of need, it really brings in data, and also kind of the stories of your community. The data that you would want to include here would really kind of streamline the need for your community, and what will happen if you are not able to meet the need. So this is just another, opportunity for you to kind of state the need for your specific geographic area, for your community, for anything that's currently happening. If you did have to pivot for any like emergency kind of need that is happening. And then the data in the need statement that we just talked about. Here we go. So if you were to compare these two and thinking what is more powerful and convincing, and number one is hunger is widespread in our community. Another way of kind of including that data into a statement is hunger is widespread in our community. 1 in 5 people in Los Angeles County are food insecure. So that kind of just gives you a little bit more of the data, helping the funder to kind of understand your specific community's need. And the program description and goals. I love that at the Los Angeles Regional Food Bank, our programming team is so amazing. They have, they really are doing such great work, and it really gives me the opportunity to talk about that work in our proposals. And I just invite all of you, if you are not already working very closely with your programming team, to go out in the field and kind of experience that for yourself and start to incorporate all of that into your proposals, because I do believe that really your grant proposals are only as strong as your programming is, and that is where your strength is. And it sounds like all of you are already doing amazing work with your programming. So now you just need to communicate that to funders, and you need to be able to show them a little bit more of the data and who you're reaching, and getting just more specific in communicating those kind of the impact that you're having. So another with the SMART goals, another just opportunity for us to kind of compare. If we were writing comparing these two, you say, with your generous support, we will reduce hunger. Or you can say, with your generous support in calendar year 2022, the food bank will distribute 110 million pounds of food to individuals and families facing hunger in Los Angeles County. So if you're just comparing these two, number 2 has more specifics. It's very, there's a goal, there's 110 million pounds of food, and there's the geographic area, Los Angeles County, and there's the need that they're facing hunger. So it's always nice to be able to write very specific and giving those details in just in one sentence, that you can add so much more to it. Many times funders may ask for how you're going to be measuring the program's success. And this may be already something that you're already tracking for your organization, but it's always great to have a template ready to put into proposals. Start gathering the short bios of your organization's leaders and staff, your board members. All of that is very helpful. Many times funders will ask for it, and other times, even if you are limited in space with your proposals, you may find that you can add some of the information in another area, something that you thought is really important and highlights your organization's strengths. And then sustainability. Susan talked a little bit about that, about how you're going to sustain a program beyond this grant funding. That's always very important to have, what kind of plans that you are doing to sustain your funding. And that may be that you are, actively fundraising or have other grants in process, or that you're keeping your program at a certain scale to kind of manage that. So that's about that. Another really important area for grant proposals is your attachments. You want to make sure that if they do ask for your board of directors list, that you provide this kind of information, audited financial statements, a organizational budget. You know, it's important to really try to meet all of the requirements, and so that your grant application won't be dismissed or delayed because you forgot to attach something. Go over to the next one. Yeah, and budgets are so important. I think, like, you know, if you think about it's just so important, it's a grant award. You'll be getting funding. The funder would like to know, you know, where is this going? And just a simple budget to kind of outline exactly where funds are going. It's very important. And you yeah, some people might, you know, be a little intimidated by this, but it is very important to kind of outline it for a funder and let them know where exactly all of the funds are going.
Hey.
Hi. I'm coming to an end here. These are just some last kind of tidbits of, you know, being very specific is essential, like we talked about in those sentences, comparing the two, using data to support your statement of need, using data to support basically your statement of need and your proposal. All of that is very helpful. And I think this is, we're here to the end. I'll pass it on to Leah.
Thank you so much, Jade. We're getting a lot of great feedback already that this is all really helpful information and stuff that people want to hear. So now we wanted to save some time at the end for you all to be able to ask questions to our presenters today. So feel free if you want to use the raise hand feature or unmute and we can call on you. I will say, Jocelyn in the chat most recently asked, do we need to have a board? What if we don't currently have one? We're a small church and pantry at this time.
Oh, sure. I mean, I can take that question. I think the question of the board, you don't necessarily have to have a board. It just depends how your organization is structured. If you're like a nonprofit, you'd have to have a board, but it just depends how your pantry is. If you're not a nonprofit and you'll be applying for these grants through a different nonprofit, like if you're going to be doing an umbrella kind of grant, or, you know, it'll depend on funders. Some require you to be a 501c3 registered nonprofit, some may not. And that really will depend on the funder. So again, kind of doing your research and seeing if you're eligible. So under guidelines for a grant, and those grant guidelines can be, you know, anywhere from 1 page to like 10 pages, depending if it's a government grant or just a private funding grant, that how specific they are. So you will want to double check with the funder to see if you're eligible.
And I'll add to that too, I'm coming from a church background, that we in the Bethlehem Food Pantry, we do not have a board of directors either. We do have a committee. Many churches have committees, and we do qualify, not for all grants, because sometimes, especially federal grants, they will not fund churches. But as you are a nonprofit and you will qualify for many, but don't necessarily have a board, in my experience.
Wonderful. We have some more questions coming through the chat. I do want to point out that Anne asked, what are tricks to find grant makers that might not be obvious? And Susan said, keeping your ear to the ground to find funders is a constant task. Watch your local newspaper, connect with political leaders, ask other nonprofits to share their sources, check with large grocery stores. Hope this helps. I thought that was a great response, so I just wanted to share that with everyone in case you missed it in the chat. And then we did have a question from Wilhelmina a minute ago that was, I think this was to Jade or Devi. Do you have someone to kind of walk us through grant writing one-on-one if we need individual help? Or do y'all have any suggestions for where to go if you need help with one-on-one grants?
For one-on-one grant writing, I don't have So I would suggest, and I know, I think the way to start would be start gathering your mission statement, start gathering kind of all of that data for your geographic area, your community, and that really starts to build out your template. As far as like if there's resources for one-on-one grant writing, I believe that there are very different various like companies that may offer these services. I'm not very familiar with them. I haven't used any of the companies, so I really can't speak to the one-on-one kind of aspect. But I think the best person to write the grants is someone who is in the organization, someone in your community. And you might think, like, well, I'm not really comfortable doing this. Well, maybe there is someone on your team that is really passionate about the work that you're doing, and you can team up together and start to put together that template. I think that's always a great start because you will know your organization best than an outside individual. And then from there, after you kind of create that template, if you still feel like you need to kind of go outside of your organization, then maybe that's a time to start looking into like a grant writing service organization, someone who does that. But I think it's always best to look within your circle.
Thanks for that, Jade. Magali asks, what are some typical grants pantries may start looking at?
Susan, do you have any ideas here? I know because you have such a great, wonderful story. I wonder, how was your start with that, with when you first started looking into grants?
Thanks, Jade. That's a really difficult question. Finding funders is hard, but if you're involved with a food bank, such as a larger one like Feeding America, they often offer grants, and that's a really good place to start. If you are a faith-based organization, a lot of times if you're in a denomination that has a larger body, they often have grants available. But those are the two places I would start first.
I would also just suggest maybe doing a little bit of sleuth work on the internet with like corporate funding and corporate funders. That's always a lot of the different, they have websites, and you'll just do like, or maybe foundations. Like if you Google foundations and try to come up with different lists there, that's a great way to start. Some people also like to look at what are the funders that are funding other pantries or food banks in your area, and like look at their funders, and then just start to, see if they would fund your organization. That's one way.
Awesome. I see a really so many questions coming in. Actually, I'm feeling like this might just be the start of a grant writing conversation. But Caroline asked, do you have any tips for beginning a relationship with a funder prior to submitting your proposal? Are you cold calling them? I know not to ask questions you could answer by looking at funders' website. So what types of topics would you discuss in a relationship building conversation? So any tips or tricks for starting that relationship building from the ground up?
Yeah, I think it's always wonderful to reach out and maybe request kind of like a general meeting. And it's really just an opportunity for you to let them know the wonderful work you're already doing. So it's like you're already doing this great program, and you're just going to use the opportunity to talk about that. We're impacting these many people, but there is still such a need. And we really are hoping to, if like Susan had, an outdoor freezer, we could reach X amount of people. So those meetings are really just a opportunity for you to kind of express your passion and enthusiasm for your mission statement, for the community that you're working with. And from there, you may not be putting in a request, but they may already be having ideas and thinking like, wow, you're really doing this great work. Maybe someone on their board is somehow kind of maybe they're, you just don't know where the relationships are or where the stories connect and how that can lead to funding. So kind of like maybe doing a cold call or a cold email and requesting, I'd like to meet with you and share a little bit about my organization and what we're doing. And maybe a lot of people may not, take you up on that, but you may be able to set up 5 meetings. And from those 5 meetings, you may be able to secure 1 or 2 grant awards. And, it's very competitive. But I think that right now is a great opportunity with the shift in how everyone is coming out of COVID and really trying to take care of their communities. I think that's so important. So I encourage you all to do that. It's important.
There's some great resources being shared from other participants for participants in the chat that I wanted to just bring everyone's attention to real quick. So open up the chat, scroll through it. There's some great info in there. We also had a question about the sustainability aspect that you all mentioned. There was one question, can you say a little bit more about the sustainability question? And the other one was to Devi, that you mentioned your approach to sustainability, looking into gardens and permaculture to help my pantries. Are there any keywords or things to add to help?
I think for sustainability, many times when the funder is asking about what is kind of your sustainability plan with a specific program, or if you are seeking funding for a kind of salaried position, they want to know what other funding have you applied for, what is like the plan moving forward to keep the program going. And I think it's always a little tricky depending on, have you secured that funding? What is your plan to kind of keep growing or to just keep what you already have afloat? And that's going to vary for your specific organization. Like I said, I'm very lucky here at the food bank. We are supported by a wonderful team of fundraisers. And so when I'm answering that sustainability question, I'm able to point to the past of our record of fundraising. And so that gives the funders kind of an idea of like, we have fundraised this amount in 2021, and in 2022, we fundraised this amount. We will be fundraising X amount in the next couple of years. So giving the funder at whatever level that you're at, a quick kind of snapshot of your history of being able to sustain programs. And if you are relying more on volunteers, so that you can also put that into your sustainability plan. We rely heavily on our volunteers to keep this program running, but we're asking for funding for this freezer, but our volunteers are going to keep the program going. So there's always a way to kind of pull in your strengths as an organization. If it isn't on the fundraising end, it's your volunteers. And that is important.
Thank you so much, Jade. And Debbie, please go ahead and share, and then I think we'll close out today's session.
Yeah, and I think to add on to the question regarding like gardens and permaculture too, I think it's a great way to help pantries and like add fresh produce to the community. I think just like mentioning that within the grants as well would really help. And once those kind of like start running, another great way to sort of like sustain the funding for that would even be like tours of like gardens and permaculture things that you have already going to the for the funders. Yeah, and I think that would just be really helpful.
Wonderful. Thanks, Debbie. All right, everyone, we need to close up. We are at 11 Pacific time. I shared a survey in the chat box. You can also see contact information for LA Regional, for Susan at Good Shepherd, and for us at Leah's Pantry, we're the NPP email. And please do fill out that survey. You can let us know what other topics you'd like to hear more on, and you can opt into our newsletter for more information. We'll be sharing slides, a recording, and the link to the survey afterwards. And big thank you to our presenters today, Jade, Debbie, and Susan. Thank you so much. Very informative, and I think this was a great webinar. So, all right, thanks all. Have a great rest of your day.